the first segment of this lesson, we started by posing 3 questions. What is knowledge? What is knowable? What does the knowing? But we only attempted to answer the last 2. Exploring the different classes of phenomena, the manifest and the hidden, and how they're known, still doesn't tell us what knowledge is. Finally, we come around to our initial question, what is knowledge? A mind has knowledge of something when it realizes it. A mind that realizes the object with which it's engaged is one that eliminates any possibility of further doubt or mistaken notion, thinking that the object isn't what it is. Additionally, it's a mind that has the power to induce a memory which knows the object with certainty. So if we see a person from afar and think, hey, there's Pete, but then start to wonder if maybe it's actually Dave, then we didn't have the knowledge that it was Pete. Or if we think that the light is a particle, but then later start to doubt ourselves, maybe it's actually a wave. Maybe it's not a particle at all. After all, it can only ever be accurately described as a wave function, and so on and so on. Then we cannot be said to have knowledge of light as a particle.
Thus, simply learning something in the sense of hearing or reading it and then being able to repeat it is not the same as knowing or realizing it. This is why Nalanda philosophy describes a 3-part process of learning. This process of learning is most significant in relation to subtler types of phenomena, the hidden phenomena. First is the learning that comes from an external source, either hearing or reading it. This is what we tend to consider learning, but if we think about it, we know there's more to learning than just this. Second is the learning that comes from internalizing. This is where we go through the process of reasoning and reflecting on our accumulated life experience to determine whether what we have learned from an external source is true or not. Through this contemplation and reasoning, we cut through all of our doubts and arrive at a very powerful, unmistaken realization. With this degree of knowledge, we can no longer be dissuaded from our understanding. We will also have a much better ability to explain why it's true to others. Learning through internalization occurs during debate. Acquiring this type of learning is a near-term purpose of debate. Once you begin to practice debate, you'll see how it serves to bring up your doubts, work through them, and finally produce a very clear understanding of the subjects of your debate. Third is a learning that comes from training. Here, we take an object that was realized in the second step, the step of internalizing, and then we become more deeply familiar with it by focusing on it for an extended period of time. If you're already familiar with the Nalanda tradition philosophy, you will have heard this 3-part learning process more frequently described as the 3 types of wisdom: the wisdom arising from hearing, the wisdom arising from contemplation, and the wisdom arising from meditation.
For example, let's say the object is subtle impermanence, the moment-to-moment change that qualifies all phenomena produced by causes. First, we will learn about it by studying and hearing others describe it. This produces the learning that arises from an external source. Then, we analyze and debate it. Think over the reasons in relation to our life experience. This produces the learning that arises from internalizing. Once this process is completed, there's no more doubt about the topic of subtle impermanence, the object that we realized. We know it in and out and no longer need to think about it. The object stays in the mind clearly and has made some profound transformation in how we recognize the objects that we interact with. Yet, it isn't complete. It isn't perfectly stable. The power of conditioning and innate cognitive bias leaves us with a sense that things are permanent. We may still have destructive emotional reactions to experience of loss. The internalized knowledge needs to be trained. This is the 3rd step of learning. It's in some sense the most simple. Here, we place the mind in single-pointed concentration upon subtle impermanence. This is the step that really reorients our thinking, that really rewires the brain. This learning began in the second step of internalizing, but it takes its most mature form in the third and final step. The mind here can come to know impermanence directly, to have a direct experience that is free of the medium of conceptual image. This kind of knowledge is often thought of a deep spiritual realization. So to recap, there are 3 types of knowable objects: manifest objects, slightly hidden objects, or extremely hidden objects. There are 2 types of knowledge-producing minds: direct perception and inference. There are 3 steps in the process of knowing: learning from sources, learning from internalizing, and learning through training. Feel free to pause the screen and let it absorb.
But don't just accept all this as truth, just because some ancient Nalanda philosopher said it so. You must actually analyze and review your own life experiences to see if it makes sense in the light of reason and evidence. To help you do that, we have the tool of Nalanda tradition debate. But before we pick up this tool directly, we'll take a quick detour to give a crash course in psychology, using the theories and perspectives on mind from the Nalanda masters. This will give us a comprehensive picture of the mind, this curious thing doing all the knowing.